In this video, I want to talk to you about raising a bilingual child. I will structure this video as per usual in 3 sections. The first section, I'll give you a little bit of context to our family and why we're choosing to raise our daughter bilingual. In the second video, I will tell you what method we are using and also what other methods are out there to be doing this. And finally, in the last portion of the video, so please do make sure to stay until the end, I'll talk to you about our experience, progress so far, how it's going, any major milestones, and other challenges as well. So without further ado, let's start talking about why raising a bilingual child is a worthwhile endeavor. Hold on a second. Before you go, a quick disclaimer. This is my experience as a mum of a 1-year-old, and I'm not an expert in this topic, so please don't come after me in the comments. I was born in Bucharest, Romania, and I grew up in a Romanian household. When I was 5 years old, I started English lessons, and I kept up those English lessons pretty much until I was 19 years old, my final year of high school. Every single year, I had to pass an exam to progress to the next level of English and get into the nitty-gritty of learning the grammar and spelling and all that. When I came to study here, I was completely appalled to hear people misusing the if clause, but that's probably for another story. After 10 years of living, studying and working in English, I do consider myself a native English speaker. And this is something that my American husband always reminds me of and tells me how in awe he is because I get to help him and correct his spelling. Having lived most of my adult life in the UK, I have realized that my ability to speak fluently in Romanian has decreased, sadly. The truth is that I do speak a bit of a Rom English where, you know, you'd throw in an English word here or there whenever you speak in Romanian. This aspect really freaked me out when I knew I was going to have a baby. Deep down, I wondered whether I'd be able to speak with her in fluent, correct Romanian all of the time, but also to find my voice in Romanian as a mother, to be able to set boundaries and educate and gentle parent and do all of these things that have to come with raising a child in proper Romanian language rather than, well, furculision, which is not speaking as a native, but speaking as a person who's translating the language. For example, I'd read these examples of how to set boundaries in English from this account called Big Little Feelings on Instagram, and I would find myself translating it in Romanian almost word for word, and because I had never heard these phrases in Romanian, I had a really hard time finding that voice. If you are a parent that has spent most of their adult life not speaking their native language, there's an element of transition to go through yourself to feel comfortable expressing yourself back in your native language when it comes to raising your kid. If you're in this situation, please let me know if you've ever had any doubt towards your own linguistic abilities and how to make this transition yourself. Despite my fears, I was 100% committed to raising my child bilingual. There's plenty of resources out there that talk about this topic, so I'll pop some links down below for you to have a look at. But for me, these were the most important reasons. For my daughter to feel good about her heritage, boost her sense of cultural identity and belonging. For her to be confident about communicating and connecting with extended family members. Also, starting early was key, as research shows that early exposure to language is best, and that 0 to 3 years is the best time to start. The next best time is to start between 3 and 7 years of age, and then between 8 years of age and puberty is also good. Okay, now let's see what methods are available and what methods we have chosen in our own home. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm not an expert in this, so for this section I had to find information online, and I'll put the article below from where I got all of this information. Now, based on my reading of this topic, there's this terminology of majority and minority language. So this is simple to understand in a situation where the community in which you live in, the country in which you live in has a majority language. Let's just say in my example, that's English. The majority language in our household is also English because that is what my husband and I speak in with each other. And the minority language is Romanian. Usually the general rule of thumb is that when you're raising your child to be bilingual, you want to offer as many opportunities as possible for your kid to have exposure to that minority language. So you do need to work extra hard and put that extra effort because they're getting so much exposure from society to the majority language, so for us in English. So I have to really ramp up the efforts in the house to make sure that Romanian is heard in very many different instances in her life. Let's start talking talking about the methods available to us to raise our children bilingual, and I'm going to start with the method that we choose to use in our home. The first method is called OPOL, which stands for one parent, one language. So as the name suggests, in a family like ours where each parent is native in one language, so Romanian and English, we choose to speak to our daughter exclusively in that language. I speak with my daughter in Romanian and my husband speaks with her in English. As I said before, I have to make that extra effort to expose my daughter to Romanian as much as possible, and I do this at the moment by, of course, speaking with her all the time, narrating what's happening in Romanian. We have some Romanian books, but there are books, obviously, there are in English, and so I'll just translate them as I go along. On some of them, I've even taken a Sharpie and I've written the Romanian word, and this doubles up as a fantastic technique for my husband to also pick up a few words here and there. All right, darling. So how do we say oatmeal? Try not to look at the board.
Oves.
Oves. How do you say blueberry?
Afina. Afina.
And afina. Strawberry?
Capșuna.
Capșuna, yes, that's a favorite. Îți place capșuna, nu? How do we say tea?
Chai.
Chai. And the latest one, orange.
Portocala.
Portocala.
Portocala. Vaca. Capra. Găina.
Găina.
Rate.
Ratze.
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 Meh, meh, meh.
What about chicken? Chicken. Chicken.
Găina.
Chick.
Oh. Pui.
Pui. In the future, I foresee having a lot more resources in the house, like films and music and books that I can read to her in Romanian so she can really get that exposure. I've read in this article as well that many experts say that at least 25 hours a week is necessary to have that exposure to the minority language. At the end of the video, I will tell you what my daughter's first Romanian word was, which was a really proud moment, so stay tuned for that. Hey, I'm barging in the middle of the video to say two things. One, baby talk. As tempting as it is to do baby talk with your child, and trust me, I know, because Romanian is a language where everything has a diminutive and everything can be small and tiny and baby-like. It is really important to try to avoid this temptation to talk baby talk to your child, and as much as possible talk to them as an adult and use the full version of the word. That's not to say that you're not going to have a high-pitched voice and be very excited to talk about toys for the 150th time, but it's important to keep that in mind about the words that we use. The second thing relates to this idea of what constitutes talking and practicing the language. So I was mentioning earlier, 25 hours a week. You don't have to think, you have to monitor your time. Try to incorporate language learning as naturally as possible in your day. I went through phases, as I was saying, in finding my voice. I went to that extreme of talking all the time and narrating everything, to now finding that happy medium, that balance, and I incorporated in natural activities and whatever we do, using the complete version of the word, pointing to different things I'm using, and always finding these natural opportunities to talk Romanian. Hope that helps. Now I'll let you watch the rest of the video. The second method you have available is called minority language at home. This can work when both parents are comfortable in one of their combined 2 or more native languages. For example, an Italian mother is raising her children in Sydney with her Australian husband, who also speaks Italian. In this case, the entire family uses Italian at home, but English when outside. This approach can avoid the sensation that some parents can have that they are excluding others from interacting with their family while out in the community. It also provides a clear framework for the kid when the home becomes the switch for the language change. The challenge in this situation is that the parent who is not using their native language to communicate with their child might feel like they're not interacting as naturally as they would in their mother tongue. The third method that is often cited in articles is that of moving to another country, and of course it might seem a bit ridiculous to talk about this right now when we're barely getting out of the house, but something to keep in mind in terms of that fully immersive experience if you do want to give that to your child. This is something that we would love to do for our daughter before she turns 3. I have these plans of her being in the kindergarten I used to go to interact with Romanian children and hear Romanian speaking in a very natural way. So hopefully we can do that. So keep that in mind, that immersive experience from moving into another country can be extremely beneficial. Also, when they become adults, these children find the idea of moving abroad to study or work much less intimidating. The fourth method often cited is that of language immersion programs. So if moving abroad is not an option, parents can choose to seek out foreign language schools in their own country where students are provided with an immersive experience in which all their classes are conducted in a foreign language. Parents may use such schools to reinforce the minority language while living abroad, or to instill a second language in their children while in their own country. This is definitely something to consider. If that applies to you, I must admit I have not done research to see if there's any Romanian schools or immersion programs here in the UK or in Leeds where we live. My intuition tells me that there probably aren't, so I'm going to have to create my own little immersion program here in our home. The final method talks about language classes, and of course, looking back, I realized that that is the method my parents chose for me to become bilingual. And in this situation, if you are monolingual parents, the idea here is that you can still instill that second language in your child by giving them as much varied exposure to movies and books and summer camps and trips and conversations to people in that other language. Say for example, you're both Romanian parents, you speak in Romanian at home, you live in Romania, but you still want your child to speak in English. You can make sure that you offer as much exposure as possible to your child and set them up for success to be bilingual by organizing language classes for them and giving them that exposure early on and throughout their childhood. Now, to wrap up the methods, I am thinking to make a video about myths usually associated with bilingual children. So if you're interested in that kind of video, do let me know in the comments below and I'll make that happen. Okay, so what has our experience been so far? So I got over my initial trepidations of finding my voice as a mother, first and foremost, finding my voice as a mother in English, and then finding my voice as a mother in Romanian. And that transition took a while for me. It took a while to find the words of endearment, words of affection that I wanted to use. Whilst internally I was going through this transition of finding my voice, externally I have spoken Romanian to her ever since she was born. In fact, when she came out of my womb, the first words that came out of my mouth were in Romanian. And I did make a video about my labor and delivery story if you're interested to see that. And I do think I have a recording in there where I do talk to her in Romanian. It is definitely hard, and again it's because I have to constantly remind myself to stay on track and speak Romanian with her. One of the best aspects for us as a family raising a bilingual child is the fact that I have found new ways to connect with my husband, and I love seeing how he picks up Romanian words. As I mentioned, I usually write the Romanian version of the word in her books. Because he's a very visual learner, he will read that word out loud and then quickly remembers it. As for Harper, she is a very talkative child. In terms of her first ever word that she ever said, it was the name of a name of a nursery mate of hers called Archie. The carers kept saying Archie, 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 and she said Archie. The second word that we heard her say was buttons. My husband kept repeating this word as he was pointing to the button of his pajama, and then a few mornings in a row she said button, button. She doesn't say that word that much now. However, the first ever Romanian word that she said that she is using all the time now, that is a very functional and helpful word as well, is apă. Apă means water in Romanian. So we have been saying the word apă to her probably from day one of her starting to eat solids, when she was 6 months and a bit. I have a video as well about that where I show you a little bit of our first week of baby-led weaning. I kept saying, vrei apă, vrei să bei apă, and she says apă now every single time she wants to drink water. Sometimes she says it and she doesn't want to drink water, but most of the times, especially if there's a glass in the room, she'll point to the glass and now she'll say apă.
Apă? Appa. Would you like more?
Want play appa?
Appa? Would you like more appa? Okay. Yeah, sneak.
Want play appa?
Appa? Yes, that's appa.
Overall, this experience is very enriching for me as a mother because, as I said, I feel more and more confident to communicate and connect with my daughter in a natural way in my native tongue. For my daughter, of course, for all the reasons mentioned above. And then finally, as I said, also for my husband because we're finding new ways to connect and communicate with each other. So do let me know in the comments below, are you raising a bilingual child? Are you going through similar challenges? Would you like to add anything and any resources in the comments below that we can all learn from? That would be really, really appreciated. Don't forget to let me know if you'd like a video on common myths when it comes to raising bilingual children, and I'll make that happen. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next week.